Well, sheep measles is a parasite infection, and it's the intermediate stage of a tapeworm. Now, this is quite hard for people to get their heads around, which is dogs have a tapeworm in their gut, and the eggs pass out with the feces onto the pasture. These eggs get consumed by a different sort of host, a sheep, through eating grass, and the eggs hatch inside the sheep's gut. Larval stages pass out into the bloodstream, and then these microscopic larvae get spread around the body muscles, and then they enter the muscles or the muscle blocks, and then start to grow into a little cyst in the muscles. And that's what the sheep measles is. It's little white cysts in the muscles, and each one of these cysts has a single tapeworm head, and if those cysts in the meat get eaten by a dog, then the dog gets the tapeworm. Now, there is no veterinary impact on the dog. He's absolutely happy as Larry, and there appears to be no impact on the sheep. So this parasite is of no veterinary or public health impact. If you ate one of these cysts, you wouldn't get a tapeworm and you wouldn't die. It's aesthetics. If you have a leg of lamb with a tapeworm cyst in it that's a bit old and it's turned into a pussy lesion, or it's progressed further and turned into a calcareous nodule, then you're not going to be particularly happy if you've just spent 35 bucks on a leg of lamb. So it's aesthetics and money lost to the Australian meat industry through this parasite is the reason it's important. Well, the parasite is a problem to the meat industry because of downgrading and condemnation of carcasses that are infected with these parasites. If you find 5 or more cysts in a carcass, then the whole carcass is thrown away. So that's a major loss. There's a whole lot of time involved in trimming carcasses. If you're going to retain carcasses that have been identified as having cysts in that are going to be used for the domestic sheep market, then they go and the lesions get all trimmed out, the carcass is carefully checked. Now, if the carcasses were destined for the international market and they find these cysts, then they can't go to the international market because these parasites are a potential international trade barrier. And historically, it was in the late 60s, 82,000 cartons of boned out sheep, Australian mutton, was rejected by the Americans, and MLA have never forgotten that. And so they are now very interested in sorting out what's going on so that we can do something about it. Currently, I'm funded by Meat and Livestock Australia to run a 2-year project looking at 3 prongs of this problem. One is we want to revisit the life cycle. We want to determine exactly, well, within reason, how much this parasite is actually costing the Australian meat industry. And we're also looking at on-farm risk factors. So we've sent questionnaires out to farmers in WA, in New South Wales and in Tasmania. And we are doing a financial impact study on abattoirs in Albany and Dubbo with Fletcher International. We're looking at the abattoir in Cressy in Tasmania with Tasmanian Quality Meats, and we're looking at the abattoir in Goulburn with Southern Meats. And they're all combining, well, not combining together, but they're all contributing data to our financial impact study that we'll be conducting over the next 18 months or so to get a handle on how much money is lost to the sheep meat industry. Well, what we've discovered so far is limited because we've only been running for about 6 months. But we've sent our questionnaires out to the farmers. They're coming back and we're processing the data on those, and that's still in the mill. The financial impact studies, we're road testing our spreadsheets and data collection methods, so we're starting to get little bits of data back from that. And with the wildlife, with the looking at the transmission pattern of the parasite, we've started to look at wildlife in addition to what's going on farm. And we've begun with foxes because foxes are widespread, and foxes occur in many areas where wild dogs do not, and in many of these areas there's sheep measles, so I don't think wild dogs are going to be a big issue, but we will look. Now, we've done an initial project with foxes. We've looked at 45, and we had 19 of those infected with tapeworms, and one of them had a sheep measles tapeworm in its gut. And we've determined the speciation looking at its DNA that we extracted, we then amplified, and then we sequenced it and compared the sequence that we got with what's lodged on GenBank and with some parasites that we got from the University of Melbourne, which are definitely Taenia ovis, the sheep measles parasite. Well, we anticipate the outcomes of this project will have a really important benefit to producers, because we will be able to identify risk factors on farm that we can maybe alert farmers to that they can do something about. We will be able to have a really good handle on what it's costing the meat industry, and then we will also understand what's going on with the life cycle. And if the parasite turns out to be transmitting in foxes, then the currently available control methods, which are dosing your dogs with anti-worm medicine to kill the worms and not feeding raw meat to dogs. You can freeze it first or cook it, freeze it for 10 days at about -10, and that will kill the parasite. So you would still want to continue doing that, but what we have got in the wings is a very effective recombinant vaccine which was developed at the vet school at the University of Melbourne. Now, if it turns out that it would be economically viable, you know, if there is a major impact on the meat industry that we have not identified thus far, if we find a lot of money's being lost, foxes are involved in the life cycle transmission, then the only viable way of controlling this parasite is to protect the sheep. And we could do this through the vaccine. However, that's several years down the track, and